G'day folks, my name's Nick Monk. I'm a landscape photographer based in Tasmania in Australia, and I thought I'd show you a video of my workflow and how I go about editing most of my images. I get questions from time to time about how I go about it, so I thought I'd do what all the cool guys are doing and do a video on it. 5 years too late, like usual. Okay, this is a photograph in the Great Western Tears, which is a World Heritage Area in Tasmania. It's an absolutely beautiful rainforest area. This is a RAW photograph. For those that don't know a lot about photography, a RAW photograph is a photograph that the camera records but doesn't apply any settings like saturation or contrast. And allows you a great deal of flexibility editing the photograph later on your computer. So generally a RAW photograph is quite flat, and as you can see with this one, it's not a bad photograph to begin with, but it is quite flat. The colours aren't really popping out, and this will show you how I go about just bringing out the best in the photo, the way I interpret it. Okay, I'll be using Lightroom. It's in Lightroom at the moment. I'll also be using Photoshop, and I use the Nik software package, Nik Color Efex, and one particular part of Nik Color Efex, which I'll show you. And I also use the TK Actions panel in Photoshop, which is an actions panel that has been developed by a photographer in the United States called Tony Kuiper. It's a wonderful set of actions. I don't know how to use 90% of it, but I use what's there as best I can to just bring a few more improvements to the photograph. I'll explain it further as I do that. It's not really a tutorial, as I said. It's more of a workflow video. So let's begin. First thing I'm going to do is just add a little bit of contrast. Just a bit, that'll do. You can see up here that with the histogram, most of the tones are towards the bottom of the image in the shadows and the darks. And we haven't got any blown tones here, which is very important. I don't want to blow out the white areas here. They might appear blown on the video due to compression, but they're completely within the realms of the exposure limits at the moment, and I'll aim to keep it that way during the edit. So I've added a little bit of contrast. I might just bring the shadows up a bit. Sort of defeats the purpose a little bit, bringing up shadows when you've done the contrast, but it seems to work okay for this photograph, and there is a bit of contrast in the lighter tones. I normally add a bit of clarity, about 7 for this. I don't want to add too much, because too much clarity generally isn't visually pleasing. So just a little bit, just to give it a little bit of an edge. Okay, I don't think there's much else I really want to do with the raw file here. I'm pretty happy with the white balance. The whites are pretty white, about what I'd expect the watercolour to be. So what I'm going to do now is take it into Nik Color Efex. I'll just get that up now. You can do this in Photoshop as well. I tend to do it in Lightroom. It doesn't really matter, to be honest, particularly the way I work things. It can take a few seconds to open up. I am editing on a fairly old computer. It doesn't like to work as fast as it used to. Now the hard drive started back up, it might actually come up. Okay, we'll just put all the sliders back to 0 there. So the only area of colour effects that I generally use is this Pro Contrast. There are heaps and heaps of different types that you can, things you can use, absolutely stacks. But for what I'm doing, Pro Contrast is all I'm interested in, and particularly Dynamic Contrast. It just adds some pop to the mid-tones and also brings up the shadows. So if we just bring that up a bit, just a smidge, not too much, otherwise it looks terrible. Just a bit there, and we're keeping the highlights preserved. That's all I want to do with this. These things can be done in Photoshop as well, but this tool does it really well and does it quickly, so that's why I use colour effects just to add a bit of pop. Should bring it back into Lightroom now. Okay, so what I'll do now is I'll export the file. I don't take it straight to Photoshop, and the reason I don't is because, excuse me, that I like to have my finished edited files in one folder, and this is just the way I like to do it. So that's exported. We'll go into Bridge, and this is the folder where I keep my finished TIFFs. There's the file there. We'll open it up into Photoshop. Okay, so you can see here I've got this action panel open, TK Actions. There is a version 5 which I have loaded on here, but I'm not that familiar with it yet, so I'm still using 4 for this tutorial. There's a heap of things it can do, just stacks, and particularly if you're blending images and that sort of stuff, but I just mainly like to use it for the contrast masks. Here we'll get all the mid-tone masks up, and that'll create some separate layers here. Okay, you can see that we have the 5 different mid-tone layers that have come up. Just to explain what's actually happening here, the actions have isolated the mid-tones in varying degrees. So here it's a much wider range of mid-tones. In fact, that's almost the entire range of tones in the image. If we go to here, you can see it's a narrower range. Go further down, narrow again. I like to start with this one here. Nothing over 50% has been selected, so there are no tones present or no histogram present here, but you'll see it still has quite an effect. And just nice strong S-curve there to bring some contrast in. Now, if you just have a look at the whiter areas, and I'll just turn it on and off for you, you can see it's added quite a bit of brightness to the white areas, and that's not something that I want. I don't want that. So what I'll do now is I'm happy with the rest of it. The rest of it looks great, but I'll click on the mask, so I've got that selected, and what I'll do is I'll paint out using a paintbrush here and black and 100% opacity. I'll paint out those white areas back to how they were before I made the adjustments. So they're masked out. They're not being affected anymore by the adjustments I've made, and it's probably a fairly subtle change there. Just adjusting the paintbrush size. I use a soft edge brush, as you should for editing this sort of thing. It doesn't need to be too exact. And you can see here now we've got a black blob there, and I'll do the same up here, just so we're not blowing that stuff out. Move back. Okay, and what I'll do now is I'll just turn that on and off. So it's off and on. So off, on. Just couple of spots that have just got a bit of extra highlight there that I don't need. There we go. The beauty is because it's only affecting certain tones and not fully, you don't need to be that fussy with your edits. No one will see any editing marks from that sort of adjustment. And yeah, on, off. Looks better there. I might just go into this one here and I'll just bring up the level just a smidge. Just bring it up a bit there. We won't depress those shadows at all. Quite happy. Just a little bit more. Quite happy with that. But again, I'll just selected the mask and I'll just paint those adjustments out so we don't have to worry about blowing highlights. And again there. There. Maybe just down on this one too. Okay. That one's okay. All right. Okay, so that is, well, that's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. Seems to be okay. So Control-Shift-E, and that'll flatten it back to the background. I'm not using those anymore, so I won't keep them out. I can always do another set if need be. I'm just going to add a little bit of saturation. It's already pretty saturated, but I'll add a little bit to the greens. Again, we've got these saturation options here. Saturation layers, I'll click on and that will again add another couple of layers, focus saturation and normal saturation. I'll just use the normal saturation. If you look at the mask here, you can see there are black, completely black areas that generally correspond with areas that don't have any saturation at all. The last thing we want to be doing is adding saturation to the areas like the water. We'll end up with a blue water and we don't want that. And this has already done the work for us and has masked that area out. It's identified that it's not an area with any saturation and so it's not going to touch it. So any adjustments we make will be to the grey areas and they're not fully selected. So any adjustments in saturation are not like the sort of adjustments that you would make if you're just using a saturation adjustment layer, which are quite harsh. So, you know, if we go right to the end, you can see, you know, it wouldn't even be unacceptable there, but there's no way I'm going that far. Go back to 0 here, just about that. And if we click it on and off, you might not see that well in the video. It's just added a little bit of extra pop into the greens. I'm pretty happy with that. So I'll flatten that. And there you have it. I've finished with this as an edited photo. I don't sharpen my finished TIFF files, and the reason I don't sharpen them is that I like to leave the sharpening until I've got a specific output. So I would sharpen for web use. I'll adjust the size, bring it down to a web size, and then sharpen for the web use. And I'll also, if I'm going to print the image, what I want to do is I want to adjust the photograph to the correct size for printing and then apply some sharpening to that. That's probably worthwhile showing you another time because I do use the Nik sharpener. It does an excellent job of preparing images for print. I'll just save that one. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have any questions, please post them in the comments wherever I post this, and I'll endeavour to answer them. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll talk to you soon.